Hello and welcome back to this channel. Jacob Payton here. Now we'll be talking about One Girl in All the World by Kendare Blake. And it says, high school is hell, especially on a hellmouth. Frankie Rosenberg is the world's first Slayer witch, but she doesn't have that slay life balance figured out just yet. She's still reeling from the deadly explosion at the annual Slayer retreat, and new evidence that some Slayers may have survived. And while she's defeated her first big bad, Frankie soon realizes it was just a warm-up act. Bigger, badder forces of evil are just getting started. The Hellmouth has been reawakened, and it's calling old friends home. Portals are opening between Sunnydale and other dimensions, and the Scooby Gang has too many demons to contend with. Real, metaphorical, and sometimes absurdly hot. Then an oracle warns of a new foe on its way. The darkness. Could this be what attacked the Slayers? And is it coming for Frankie? If you saw my first video on this series, I absolutely love this. The second book did not disappoint. It literally starts right where the last book stopped. The Slayers are still missing. Many are presumed dead. We're not really sure, who's been affected, who hasn't. Xander and Dawn still haven't made an appearance, so they're kind of Xander, Dawn, Giles. A lot of the old characters haven't. It's mostly just Oz, Willow, and Spike, who are from the original series, if that makes sense. Although we do kind of learn that a lot of the Slayers from the last season, if you are someone that has seen all the seasons of Buffy, a lot of the Slayers that are being talked about and are being mentioned were there when the Hellmouth was closed. And this becomes apparent when there are some surprise drop-ins, especially when someone known as the Darkness places a beacon inside the Hellmouth that starts calling all these demons from past seasons of episodes of Buffy into Sunnydale that Frankie and her friends have to contend with. I still very much feel like this is the spiritual successor to the Buffy the Vampire series. I mean, the dialogue is right. The storylines they feel like they could be episodes of Buffy. One thing I really like is the fact that it tells a new story while at the same time giving fans that have been around for a long time, it gives that payoff, that feeling of, oh, I know what's going on, or, this one sentence of dialogue is something that was from season 4 or something, and, that it just kind of makes it feel good, if that makes sense, as someone who's been part of the fandom for as long as I can remember. As Buffy was on TV. Buffy was on TV when I was a kid. There was reruns all throughout my life. I've seen all the seasons multiple times. I've read the comics. I loved Angel. The point being is there's a lot of payoff in this book. It's very clear that the author is a fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This tie-in, it feels like it just feels like the spiritual successor. The dialogue is snappy, it's crisp, and it feels like the dialogue that would be in a Buffy episode, right? It's that back and forth, playful banter. It's the tying together of the Scoobies that I just think this series brings a lot to the table, and I'm kind of shocked I haven't really heard more about it, especially since Buffy has really had such a resurgence in the last couple years. I mean, was kind of everywhere for a hot minute, and I still see a lot of stuff on it, and there's a lot of podcasts that have popped up talking about. There's a lot of popular media that is referencing Buffy the Vampire Slayer. There was talk of a reboot not too long ago, which I don't know what happened to that. I think the CW was trying to do it. I don't know who's trying to do it now. It just kind of surprised me. I'm not hearing more about this book series. Like I said, I stumbled across this book series at the library because this was on their new just in page, and I was reading the description, and I was like, well, this is the second book, so I got to go ahead and grab the first and read that as well. And that's kind of how I came to this series. And so far, I am absolutely loving it as a Buffy fan. I mean, I'm looking forward to see what's going to happen. If there is, I'm hoping there's a third book. Who's going to come back? Is Xander going to come back? Are we going to see, what's up with Dawn? What happens with some of these enemies that are getting really brought in, because a lot of like the big enemies, like she defeats, it's just like I said, it's just like an episode of Buffy where she defeats all these little enemies throughout the book, but a lot of the bigger overarching enemies, some of them get away, some of them survive, some of them are immortal in the way they can't be destroyed. They can only be kind of like stopped for a while and they come back. So it's definitely, the world that's being built is definitely one that has a lot of continuity, and I'm very interested to see how many books we're going to get in this series, what it's going to lead to, because man, this stuff is amazing. I absolutely love it. Like I said, as a Buffy fan, like this is the reboot I would want to see. It has enough new stuff that I think for people that have never read a Buffy book or seen a Buffy episode can jump in here and they know what the series is and they would enjoy it. It's going to appeal to like young adult readers that aren't necessarily as enmeshed in the Buffyverse as other people. And then it has everything for fans of the Buffyverse. All the characters feel like themselves. I don't know how else to really put it. Another writer that does this really well in some of his Buffy tie-in novels, I think, is Christopher Golden. But I'm gonna be honest, the way this is done, and it's kind of the continuity. I can't talk today. The continuity of the Buffy series, right? I mean, this is not the gang in their teenage years, their early 20s. This is them in their 30s and 40s. I mean, Willow is a mother in this series, and it still feels right. And I think, I think that would be a hard thing for any writer to do in any series, especially one that, it's off the air. Whereas like some of the authors that I like, they were jumping in between seasons essentially, so they had a lot to work with, when this is like basically all original. And I just think that takes a very talented author, and I'm very excited to see what's going to come after this, because man, is this amazing. If you're a Buffy the Vampire fan and you are not reading these books, you are doing yourself a disservice. There are 2 books out. This is the second one. This is One Girl in All the World. It's very much grounded in the original Buffy series, but at the same time, it takes place in modern times. There are modern situations happening, social norms that weren't norms in the 90s are norms today, so we kind of get to see that. I mean, it's everything a new Buffyverse series should be. Willow is still Willow. Spike is still very much Spike. But it's also interesting to see how they've changed and how they've grown as people over the years, and we're given that, right? There's payoff there that I think is amazing. It's the same with Oz, who's now, like I said in the first video, he's raising his nephew Jake, or not really nephew, but anyway, he's raising this kid Jake, who is also a werewolf, and we kind of get to see that, because Oz was a character I really enjoyed, and him essentially leaving the show at one point was kind of disappointing. But of course we got Tara. I am glad to see that, he is someone that kind of returned to the series, and watching him, Willow, and Spike all kind of come together and basically take on the reemerge Hellmouth, I think is something amazing for any fan of, the Buffy stuff. Especially, seeing the friendship between Willow and Spike is really awesome. Of course, like, it existed kind of in the comics, but I think this is even like a better level, because once again, they're not, in a lot of the comics, they're early 20s, they're still very angsty, they're still gripping with a lot of stuff. I love the comic series. I love how long it is. I love how much it gives us, but I just think it's something different when they're in their middle age, essentially. As someone that, 30 is coming up fast for me, life's very different at that age. things, you know, I don't have kids, but I imagine, you know, with Willow having kids, that priorities shift, right? And I think it's interesting to see how the immortal, unchanged 27, 28-year-old vampire Spike is still able to kind of fit in that, and his roles change, right? I mean, we see that in this. He kind of very much cares for Frankie. He's been in Frankie's life for as long as she can remember, and he doesn't pull away from that. And I think that's really, like I said, I think that's very interesting to see, as, once again, this is all fan stuff. This is stuff that, you know, when you first get introduced to Spike in the Buffy Summer series, you're not thinking that at some point he's going to be an almost father-like figure for some kid. And if anyone, you would think that of Angel, but he is not in that series yet. It would be very interesting to see. Like I said, I would love to see Giles make an entrance. I would love to see Angel make an entrance. I'm always a huge fan of the Angel series. They mentioned Andrew is somewhere walking around in here. I would love to see that. Of course, there is, like I said, there is a lot going on, and this is mostly about Frankie, who is growing closer to Grimlock, which, I'll be honest, her flirtatious relationship that seems to be moving in a little more physical direction with Grimlock very much reminds me of Buffy's relationship with Angel. However, I do enjoy the fact that, I guess don't really enjoy it, but I do appreciate the fact that Grimlock is very open from the beginning that he is a demon, right? We know that going in, he is the hunter of Thrace. I still don't understand why all of these, like, 2,000-year-old demons have a weakness for 17-year-old girls. Like, that's their thing. They're like, so you're a slayer and you're 17? Tight. Willow, obviously, watched Buffy go through all of this with Angel. Does not want this happening. And of course, we don't know what happened to the Slayer that Grimlock was dating. So, you know, that is something that is probably going to come up in this book. I don't want to give spoilers, but, you know, it kind of does. Like I said, I think the twist about who the Darkness is really, really top notch. It's one that I think was kind of hinted at in the first book, but definitely not one I 100% saw coming in the way that it was, and for the reason that it was. And I think it's going to be interesting too, because we do find out in this book, which was basically shown to us in the last book, is that Buffy and the rest of them are in some other dimension, right? We don't know who all survived. We're assuming Buffy survived, but they're in some other dimension. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see what the world looks like. You know, who's Buffy at 30-some years old? Who's, you know, what's the Buffy Summers that's been leading an army of Slayers for the last decade, or more than a decade, you know, almost 20 years. What does she look like? What is she, you know, is she a war-hardened leader, or is she someone that's going to be able to guide Frankie? I think that's going to be interesting to see. And I think it's also going to be interesting to see, you know, if she does make a comeback, Frankie kind of talks about her as like this loving aunt, but how is that going to change now that Frankie's a Slayer? And I think we're going to see a lot of, obviously, changes there, because there was changes with Spike, right? Spike became harder on her. Willow makes a comment at one point when Frankie and the rest of the new Scoobies are out on patrol that she wondered if this is what Joyce and Giles felt like when they stayed at home. And I thought that was very poignant and very interesting take too, because at one point, you know, Joyce does know about vampires and everything. She knows what Buffy and the rest of the gang are doing, and Giles has known the whole time. And that's the thing, they're letting these teenagers risk their life every night. And I just think that, once again, I hate continuing to use the word interesting, but I don't know what other word to say. It's interesting. It's amazing to see a series grow and evolve in such a way that we're still getting amazing new content. Yeah, I absolutely love this series. I can't say enough good things about it. If you're a Buffy fan, you need to be reading this book series. I don't know if the series actually has a name. I kept trying to figure that out. But I haven't seen it called anything. So maybe it has a name on Amazon and I'm just dumb because I keep looking inside the books and on the front of the books. But either way, I love this series. Look it up. This is the second book. Start with the first. Yeah, if you like Buffy, go read this. If you don't know about Buffy and you want to, definitely go check this book out. I think it's a good introduction to the Buffyverse. Obviously, go watch all the old TV shows. And yeah, if you've read this, you liked it, you didn't like it, please let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.